Hello and welcome to the third Elite Prospects 2026 NHL Draft ranking. Since the last time we convened, the World Juniors have happened, tons of other hockey has been watched, and there is a new number one in town. David, take it away.
Yeah, we had those discussions last time. It was pretty hard debate for number one. We decided to keep McKenna in this spot, thinking that he was the most special prospect, and we gave him a bit of a runway. Maybe he would perform a lot better at the World Juniors, show better motor, a better impact at 5-on-5. And he did to an extent, I'd say, but not to the point where we're keeping him at one this time around. If we look at the votes for our board, we're going to have a new number one. It's Ivar Stenberg. It's a pretty clear choice, at least for me and for many others in this room, I think. Stenberg has like 90% of McKenna's playmaking. He can do many of the same things on the power play and maybe even a bit more at 5-on-5. He can attack in, find teammates behind him. He can deceive defenders, challenge them to create space for teammates, really make some advanced plays, non-evident plays. So things that most other players won't see. He's scoring at a super high rate in the SHL. And more you can call him special. And this is what maintained McKenna at the top of our board last time. Now Stenberg is entering that kind of category, and he's just going to have an easier projection and an all-around better impact at the NHL level, I think, outside of the power play, where McKenna might be still the king. To me, it's a pretty clear choice for number one. Does anyone want to add more on this debate?
Yeah, I think like the argument is between like, do you want like this complete guy that's maybe going to be a point per game player, but he's going to do a lot for you off the wing, or do you want a guy that has maybe that upward like higher end point production type game, but maybe is a bit softer, maybe isn't the greatest player in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. So just with size disadvantages and uh, some of the issues with just using contact skills and everything. Like Stenberg is for sure the more NHL ready of the two. And like David said, like the gap isn't as huge as initially thought, I
Yeah,
think.
he can create in more diverse way. Like he can create off the walls better from behind the net, off the rush. Maybe they're similar, but Stenberg attacks with more pace. He's better able to play at NHL speed than McKenna, who wants to slow down the play and really use his teammates and depends on others being in the right position for him to bounce the puck off of them and create those tic-tac-toe plays and give and goes. Jimmy, what do you think of Stenberg?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I watched him live this Thursday. He was back playing in the SHL. Other than been said before, I thought he was really good at protecting the puck. His slow down pace too. There, he was the guy dominating the place when he was on the ice. And that is pretty impressive at the SHL level. He took the puck, he protected it, waited for the next play. He sometimes drove with speed. He did a little bit of everything. He had also a sequence where he attacked the defender and lift the defender's stick while he was deking. Some sort of high skill like that you rarely see SHL players do. So yeah, he's a really good, probably the smartest and most skilled SHL player on the best SHL team. So he will be better and better, I think, this season. Maybe sometimes they get a little deep after the World Juniors, but he looked really good. So I think he will be continuing to improve and maybe even play at the men's World Championship for Sweden if he keeps this on.
Yeah, and we still feel like we can't drop McKenna too much. He's still a clear candidate for first overall. He's someone who could climb back up to this position if he shows improvement in his weaknesses in the NCAA. So more engagement all around, a better impact at 5-on-5, more of an ability to create off the wall, and some better defensive engagement. Like we don't think his defense matters as much as other prospects because he's going to be a special player in the NHL if he reaches his upside, someone who might make a coach adapt a system around him or at least around his line. So the special creativity, it's still a separating factor for him compared to other players in this draft. But there's a bit of a debate also with Chase Reid, another prospect that we really like, a defenseman who has great all-around tools and offensive capabilities and defensive game. Mitch, what do you think of the debate between McKenna and Reid?
Well, right now, I don't think it's much of a debate. I think you just have to take McKenna because the upside in terms of pure offensive production remains astronomical, especially because he is showing some signs of life in his cycle offense game, which is the core of how his game operates. Now, with that said, with Chase Reid, you're getting someone who can probably step into the NHL next year and probably be part of your power play, probably be a pretty significant factor of your team's 5v5 offense as well. He's a bit of an interesting development curve, being a late grower playing in the NAHL last year, and then moving on to the Sioux, which by the end of the season he was their number one, playing 30 minutes a night often. So I think what makes Reid interesting is that you have the development curve, the very sharp upward trajectory, combined with the fact that he is already playing huge minutes, combined with the fact that he's creating offense against top competition, and that there's a lot of parallels for him in the NHL. You look at the leading scorers among blue liners in the NHL, like someone like Zach Werenski, Charlie McAvoy, even Noah Dobson in years past. These are players who a lot of their offense comes through simply joining the rush, walking in for chances, and then finding teammates as they get open. That's what Chase Reid does. It's not always beautiful or flashy, though it can be, but it's just a consistent offensive presence where the game flows through him. He's a pretty easy projection to the NHL, and with that, you also do have the number one, offensive driver upside if he can take his playmaking to another level.
And what do you think of the comparison with Verhoeff that we're probably going to have right next to him on this board?
Well, I mean, it's the big thing is Reid is older and smoother, whereas Verhoeff is one of the younger players in the draft class. The skating, it's a little bit more rough around the edges, though he can fly in open ice. He's just a little stiff. Verhoeff is definitely more of like a natural playmaking type, and he does have the big shot too. But Reid, I think it's probably just easier to envision Reid stepping into that role in the NHL, whereas with Verhoeff, it's going to require more mechanical refinement. You're hoping that the defense and the defensive skating can take another step, and also on top of that, you're hoping that uh, well, the simple fact is Verhoeff might, with his current skill set, I'm not convinced that he's NHL ready next year, and I think there might be a little bit of a longer development curve for him to reach his upside than with Reid.
Well, Whitaker, you were at the World Junior Championship. What do you think of those two prospects and how they compare?
Yeah, I saw a lot of both guys. Obviously, Reid stepped into a bigger role, especially when Hudson went out. Verhoeff started outside the lineup, and I thought he got better as the tournament went on, especially the New Year's Eve game and the quarterfinal game. I thought he was flashing some playmaking moments, hitting seams, exploiting the weak side, and Reid Reid had dominant moments from the start. His own zone was a bit of a fire sale at times, but there were, shifts where Reid would dance on the blue line, then come back out and activate, and then hit a weak side trigger and, create a point or score or generate offense that way. So I think Reid, like Mitch said, is a lot more polished. Verhoeff looked like a baby giraffe at times, stumbling around and struggling with pressure. He turned a lot of pucks over, especially earlier in the tournament and in the crucial games there. But I think Reid is a more polished player and a guy that has the offensive upside, and it's easier to see him running a top power play unit in the NHL.
This is probably going to be our top four. If we look at the votes, there's a pretty big gap between these players and the other ones on the list. Last time we had someone else pushing for a top spot or the top spot on our board, and it was Ethan Belchetz. What have you thought of him recently, Lauren? Is he still in that conversation, or is someone who might be dropping his stock a bit more?
Yeah, so this is actually good timing for a meeting. I saw Belchez yesterday come into town, and he still has all of that, that raw potential that we were so impressed with and excited by earlier in the season. 6'5" power winger, super skilled, super mean, physical. Over the course of this season, the first half, we've sort of seen him play a bit more passive. He's not as aggressive on pucks or even carrying the puck as often as he was last season. Not as frequently getting to the middle of the ice. The playmaking has appeared in flashes, but is mostly been inconsistent. And so without that, added layer of aggression and physicality to back up that, the fluctuating skill at times, he has started to slide, probably not just out of our top 5, but he still looks like from a special elements perspective, like he still looks like a top 10 pick, but it's probably just that the 4 players ahead of him, or that we've discussed previously on this board, and probably others, have continued to add elements to their game or elevate in bigger situations this season. And whereas Belchetz has taken a little bit more of a step, not necessarily step backwards, but he just hasn't really shown that he can be that impact player yet. There were flashes of it yesterday. Physicality was much improved, getting to the middle more frequently, just looking to see more of that dynamic playmaking come back to the forefront of his game in the second half, and then maybe he could start to climb back into that top 5 conversation.
So we can still consider him, but maybe we'll wait a bit to rediscuss him. The player that has the most votes, or that is weighted the highest right now, is Carson Carels. What do you think of him, Dan? Does he belong at the 5 spot?
Definitely in this area for sure. He's one of the better skaters in the draft, especially defensive skating. He's extremely disruptive. He's very physical. It was an added dimension for this year. He plays in every situation. He's more simple than you would want on the blue line offensively. But his game is very much like how we described others in terms of just it's like simple low shots and activations and a lot of speed off the rush and kind of like outside to inside funneling. I think he has value because the certainty is so high that he's going to be a top 4 defender just because of his physical tools and the way he processes the game. I just think that maybe he doesn't have the crazy offensive dimension that the guys ahead of him do. But you're getting that certainty, you're getting that upside. Maybe he's a high end number 2 or runs his own pair as like a number 3. Yeah, he's a guy that's constantly improved. He's shown up in key games. He was great at the World Juniors in a limited role. There's just a lot to like, and there is a more dynamic dimension to his game that he hasn't shown, and I don't know if we're ever going to see it, but you get flashes of it, like his goal last night in overtime on the breakaway. He made a really nice dangle to win the game, and he's basically the driver of a PG team that's been a lot better than what they should have been. Crushing some of the better teams in the division. So there's lots to like with him. I think there maybe is other options around here, but he's definitely in the stratosphere.
He probably feels like the safest option, maybe even a plug-and-play NHLer. Someone who could play very early, and the floor is very high, easy to project. This is very enticing when we're making a board. There are some upside picks and other players who have that kind of profile at forward or at defenseman. Maybe the next logical step would be to talk about Albert Šmits, who has a similar kind of projection, but maybe doesn't have the same level of control in this game. Yannick, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, Šmits is a guy we discussed quite a bit for the last ranking, and I'm sure we'll continue to debate his game for a long time, up until draft day. His scoring has been a bit down recently, so he had a stretch where he was scoring at a really high rate in Liga games, and that was quite promising. That slowed down a bit. He was good at the World Juniors. He continues to do his thing, but at the same time, as we've discussed over the past weeks, the concerns that we've had, the sense concerns, the really high activity rate with maybe not high-end skill. Those concerns still remain, but what he's doing at the same time is still quite promising. For me personally, especially now looking at our board, something I still see is we have a lot of late birthdays, late 07s, relatively high. A guy like Šmits started out ready to play Liga games, and that's what he's been doing all season. He started ahead, but we're kind of seeing guys like whether it be Carels or Malte Gustafsson, who I personally have ahead of Šmits even right now, just because of how he's improved over the past weeks and months. We're maybe getting to a point where those younger birthdays are catching up a bit. So I do wonder if now is already a good time to kind of look at which of the younger birthdays could jump the older guys at the top, but also later on the board. But Šmits is definitely still up there. Lassi, maybe you can add your thoughts on him.
I think I've not seen the kind of growth over the past few months that I maybe hoped based on how he came into the season. But I still really like the overall package, the activity rate, the offensive timings, and his shot is really good still, even if he's not scoring as much lately. But I still think that the floor is pretty high overall because of the skating and the size and the physicality and the really active one-on-one defense. Maybe the details and hockey sense overall is still a bit of a concern. It's probably like an average projection for me at least. Maybe some would argue it should be a bit lower even than that, but I still like him in this range, this 5 to 10 range, but obviously there are other options that are good as well.
Yeah, well, we talked about the comparisons with Artem Levshunov in his draft here. Both very physically mature prospects who have a lot of runway still. The difference is that Levshunov had better offensive instinct, and looking at him now, Šmits seems like more of a prospect who projects more safely to a defensive role than an offensive one. He has a good foundation there with his skating agility, with his strength and physical inclination, so he can shut down opponents on the boards, push back against them around the net. He can defend the rush very well, and his gapping is only going to improve as he ages because of that skating foundation and the way he wants to really engage opponents. And his defensive awareness is not it's not a super great strength, but it's not a weakness either. I think there's a pretty safe floor there. It's just that the puck plays, it's a bit random with him. He's someone who really wants to take the puck on the wall and protect it and hold it there. And he plays a bit like a forward sometimes. And it's unusual. It doesn't really lead to great plays that often. Sometimes he has highlights, but it's more in open ice when the plays are made partly for him. So there might be a lower playmaking upside than Levshunov in his draft here. The more is better, and he could fill that kind of defensive role. So there's some barrel with Carels, and this is why I brought him up soon after talking about Carels. But I think Carels has more clear offensive upside, more playmaking instinct. He's more comfortable playing that type of game. There's a bit of a gap there for me, so I think Carels would stay ahead. And I don't see a lot of support to have Šmits at like number 6 or number 7. So maybe we could discuss the forwards with more upside now. We have a pretty big riser on our board, who is Caleb Malhotra, who started for us at the edge of the first round, I think, on the last board, or somewhere in that area, because we didn't see as much offensive upside in this game. He was someone who projected well to a defensive supportive role, third line, bottom 6, but now he's improving rapidly. And it comes back to the point that Yannick said, that some of these prospects are going to rise, others are going to stagnate, and Malhotra is a clear riser for us, and someone that I like to hear Lauren on, because he might make a push for our top 10 and even deep in our top 10.
Yeah, so I think Malhotra's a really interesting prospect in terms of like just a really responsible two-way player that he has been all season. He plays on a really deep team in Brantford, so maybe he didn't necessarily get have the most attention on him at the beginning of the season, given that how many NHL drafted prospects are on that team. Obviously, scouts are very high on him. He was really impressive at the CHL USA Prospects Challenge back in November. And then he continued that strong play over the course of the holiday into the holiday break and into 2026. He was one of the better players at the OHL Top Prospects game last week. Just continues to elevate and show more skill, more pace. Really complimentary, skilled support player, especially like a really advanced support player. But now we're starting to see in the second half more of that skill game come to the forefront. And that's probably why he's continued to climb, and not only in the eyes of like NHL teams, but on our board as well.
What do you think of the comparison between him and Belchetz, who probably has more special elements, but maybe the consistency is a factor here? What do you think?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of an interesting comparison. Obviously, the size is a big difference, but over the course of the season, we're looking for prospects to continue showing new elements and layers to their games, and I think Malhotra has done that all season. Continued to rise to the occasion, deliver when it matters. We haven't necessarily seen that out of Belchetz yet, although I would assume that we're pretty confident that he will find those elements of his game again at some point, hopefully this year. But right now, if we're looking for prospects who are continuing to rise and rise to the challenge, bring new elements, Malhotra has probably passed Belchetz in that capacity.
Mitch, what do you think about Carels, Malhotra, and Belchetz? How should we order them?
Yes, this is a great question. For me, I had Carels and Malhotra tied and Belchetz a little bit lower. I think well, first off, there's nothing better than publishing a ranking and then a few hours later, a player immediately destroys everything that you thought about them, like Caleb Malhotra did at the CHL USA Challenge. That was fun. But I think I think with Malhotra, it's been the addition of more pace and that he's really starting to find the timing of the CHL game now. Like you really start before it was like he'd come in, slow down, try to dangle, turn it over. Now it's he's reading gaps in space and manipulating. He's not just an open ice player. He can actually make plays through contact, leveraging his physical game a lot more. I mean, he's pretty much an easy player to project to a number 2C role. I think Carroll's is top four defenseman guaranteed, if there are guarantees in the world of hockey scouting. And then there's a really good chance that he's a great number two as well. Belchetz remains the most special, though. He really is. He's a gigantic power playmaker with a great shot. It's just as Lauren mentioned, the passivity, the fact that he doesn't get the puck a ton, and the fact that he's not been great at going out and getting the puck himself. Like what you want to see from a player in that archetype is not just spacing the ice and going to the net, but being willing to enter battles with speed, take opponents hard into the wall, have the skills to dig out pucks and bring them inside. And he's been missing that way too much down the stretch, although there have been some flashes. But now that I think about it, who is actually the most special? Who is actually the most dynamic creator of any of these guys? It's Xavier Villeneuve.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was waiting to bring him up just with that argument. If we value special, honestly, we haven't talked about him just yet because the floor isn't as much there compared to these other prospects we discussed, Carels, Malhotra, even Belchetz to an extent. If we want to make a play on upside and we have confidence that it's going to work out, I think this is Xavier Villeneuve's gap, not gap, but spot. Hattie, what do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, he's in a peculiar situation in Blainville. They're not really nearly as successful as anyone thought they would be. And his point production is pretty much evened out compared to last year. So we're talking about a prospect who hasn't taken a major jump up offensively, but has taken a major jump up defensively. He's gotten way better at controlling play, off puck, kind of mirroring carriers' feet, the way he defends entries. I've seen him lose a stick and still defend entries solidly. So there's a definite defensive skill set that he's kind of trying to hone. He's going to be in a similar spot to Lane Hutchinson where there's going to be some defensive plays that just aren't accessible to him. But the skating really makes up for it. At the end of the day, this is a player who can really keep up with his speed. His pivots are smooth. His transition defending is good because of the way that he skates. But at the end of the day, I just there's a lot less certainty with him versus a guy like Carels or Malhotra or even Šmits. With all his rawness, has the frame and tools in order to have a bit more sureness to his profile. And we're gonna have to see. I think Mitch mentioned this last meeting, but we're gonna have to see a big step up. In terms of the overall control of the game as he climbs the ranks. But I'm confident that Villeneuve will figure it out. It's just a matter of how much you value that, because I don't think any team's gonna look at Villeneuve seriously at fifth overall. Um, I think, if we're confident in his skill set, he could slot in here. But I personally, as much as I love Villeneuve, I would still have Carroll's and maybe a couple other players ahead.
It's about mixing in upside and certainty, and it's always the great question when making this board. We're always
Yeah,
the valuing upside more, but it's not purely upside. There's also a mix of certainty. If a prospect has too low of a floor, we take that into account. But we're also valuing special elements above everything else. And
yeah, he
yeah,
has that. He
he
definitely
has
has
that
that.
in spades. Yeah, and yes, there's always a consistency factor, but he's in his third season in the TMJHL in the same kind of environment. When it matters to an extent, like even at the CHL US NTDP game, he was one of the best players, just taking over shifts and really making things happen a lot. Like he's a game breaker when the other prospects we're discussing are really not. Like they're going to be a solid base of a team. They can be franchise changing to an extent, but we've seen another prototype of Xavier Villeneuve succeed, and
Mhm.
he's better at the same age than Lane Hudson. Even if we factor in the lack of recent growth, because there was some growth this season, but he's not continuing to skyrocket. Defensively, the mobility is much better. He's pulling off more creative moves than Hudson. It's just about figuring out if he has the same drive, because this is
Yeah.
really what's pushing Hudson forward clearly. So he's an outlier, but when we have another prospect who looks like the outlier and who could, and the NHL has already figured out how to use him because of the outlier, I think he should be around these spots, like at 5, 6, 7. He shouldn't be a prospect who would drop too much. The upside is
Yeah,
too
for sure.
great, and there's a bit of a floor there too as a power play specialist still because he's that special on the power play with his movement,
Oh
opening up
yeah.
gaps, opening up lanes, just the way he moves with his skating. And then you add the deception, the one-on-one capability. He can make plays as a slot, find difficult passing plays too. Very exciting prospect.
Yeah, I think the only player who holds a candle to him in this draft class in terms of vision and creativity is Gavin McKenna. So that gives you a good idea of kind of what we're looking at here in terms of the higher end upside of his offensive skill set. Yeah, I think if we really value special, we really want to hone in on special in this ranking. I don't see anyone else in this range that can make up for him. I'm just a bit cautious, is all.
How
From
do
what
you
I
guys see his development from the start of the season to now, and also from last season to this season? Just because he's like 20, 15 days removed from eligibility for last year's draft. He's one of the oldest players in this class. He was a point per game scorer last season. He was also close to a point per game, I think, in his rookie season already.
Yeah.
And just comparing that to a guy like Carroll's, for example, I saw live at the Holinka in August, and I thought he was fine. He was decent. He did his shutdown job, and that was basically it.
Mhm.
And then comparing that to watching him on video at the CHL USA Prospects Challenge, I saw a ton of growth with him. And he's obviously 9 months younger, and you can see that, like as I was saying with Šmits before, some of these guys catching up. So how do you see Villeneuve's development to
Yeah.
this point, and what do you expect going forward from him?
Yeah, so I think compared to last year, we're seeing a lot. There's two elements that I've seen really grow in spades with Villeneuve. It's the defensive elements and also the tenacity. He's got a lot more drive, a lot more intensity, a lot more compete than he did last year. So there's just two elements that have grown a ton with him. Offensively, he keeps exploring. He's always trying new things, which is almost impressive given how long he spent just trying stuff so far in the KMJHL. I think there's decent growth. I think it's stagnated over the last month or month and a half or so. After the CHL USA Prospects Challenge, he kind of just went back to, what he was doing at the end of last year, start of this year. So the main growth that I saw was really, you know, October, November. There was a decent kind of amount of progression, but throughout December, I didn't really notice anything new with him, new explorations, new ideas, new defensive elements, better skating, nothing like that. So, stagnation over the past month, but there was a definite progression in this game leading up to the Prospects Challenge.
This is
So
something
regardless of, sorry, one more question. Regardless of where he ends up on the board now, what does he have to do to be fifth on our board at the end of the season? Like, what do you expect from him the rest of the way?
It's a good question. I think, you know, I want to see more consistency in the defensive elements, and I want to see him just kind of develop as a player. In terms of his ability to control games off the puck. On retrievals, there are some elements that offer some cause for concern. His retrievals with back pressure aren't ideal, but I don't think that's something you can develop in the queue. I think that's something that's going to have to come at the next level, whether that's NCAA or AHL. But we're going to have to see some progression in his retrieval game in order to make it NHL scalable. That's the main thing I could look at as an issue.
Okay.
I like to hear Dan on this too. Carels and Villeneuve. He was a bit down on Villeneuve, I think. If you look at his board, what do you think of that debate? And add in Malhotra too.
I think it was probably a little. I'm kind of convinced by the special argument with Villeneuve. Um, I'd rather go on the higher end, skill wise here, especially this high. Um, I think this is a little too high for Malhotra, who, um, while has like the development curve has skyrocketed. It's just he's still kind of like a lower pace guy in moments, and I just kind of believe with the argument with Villeneuve being a little more special and the way that he creates advantages. I had some recent games where he was not creating any advantages and not doing any of that sort, just kind of going along with the flow of the game. But I've also had outstanding views going back to last year where he was by far the most dynamic quantity on the ice, the most dynamic player that I had seen in a while. Just the way that he can suck in pressure and then beat it working downhill and then his playmaking out of that. So I think we should probably go Villeneuve here, but just to hit the higher end upside, especially since we've seen so much good from him as a team. So
Since there's a bit of separation in the weighted ranking, I personally go Carels at 5, Villeneuve at 6, and then maybe Malhotra. This might be more of a step-by-step process. We've seen growth of one player, Malhotra, but we'll still want to see continued growth on that aspect. And he has some things we have to monitor still. Every time he tries a play, it's maybe a kind of roll of dice. You don't know what's going to happen. Is he going to be able to pull it off at his skill level? He keeps pushing his limits. So he keeps growing, but we can wait a bit before pushing him all the way to like 5 or something like this. Carroll has a similar upside. Not similar upside, but if he's a number 2 defenseman, it's comparable in some ways to Villeneuve. He's going to provide more in other aspects of the game. Villeneuve, we really like him. He has the upside argument and the special argument. He hasn't grown as much, but I don't think he's in an environment to really grow that much this season. It's the same thing as last season. It's the same pattern, and he's playing an all-star team. So it's not challenging as much to him as for other prospects who are more younger and just figure out the league still. It's going to matter a lot for him how he's going to perform down the line in this all-star team. Can he carry it all the way to the Memorial Cup and further? So this is middle of the season board. It's all going to change, and I think the arguments are still in favor of Belchetz in the top 10 at number 8. Someone who has special elements too, could become a top line complementary, a power forward scorer in front of the net. He can make advanced passing plays in his best moment. We just want to see more pace. Šmits seems like the logical candidate for 9 too, because of the defensive foundation and the tools foundation. And the 2 other prospects who would be in this grouping, One hasn't played that much this season, even if he has a lot of upside, and the other one hasn't met our expectations over the past months, really, since coming back from injury. And I'm talking about Oscar Hemming and Tynan Lawrence.
I still think I'm the highest on Tynan Lawrence in this room. I've loved this player for over a year now, but it's true that he wasn't being challenged enough in the USHL and was playing a very similar style to what he was doing last season. But he remains one of the more detailed and youngest players in this draft class, and his skating, his speed, his pace are unrelenting every single game that I've watched. But he's a guy that I've still liked already in his first couple games at Boston University, but it's a tiny sample so far, playing second line minutes with Cole Eiserman and Ryder Ritchie. But he's really elevated them and enabled them to be a bit more creative from the wing, and he's sprung Eiserman for some breakaways. He's showing off his playmaking skill more than he was able to in Muskegon, but definitely I think some stagnation in terms of he wasn't adding elements into his game in the first half of the season, but I think he has a lot of room to continue doing so now that he's in an environment where he is being actively challenged and where he has to really reinvent certain parts of himself in order to produce because he's yet to score a point with BU despite creating quite a bit. And that being said, I still think he has a good shot at being the top center selected on draft day. But of course, with Malhotra, you're looking at a trajectory that is rising really quickly. And with Lawrence, it's been a lot more stagnant and stable this season. But still, I see a player that has significant top six potential down the middle. And I definitely think is in the same tier as the players we've been talking about here for the last half hour. But I can also see why a lot of other people in this room have a lot more excitement for the other new NCAA arrival that we're considering here in this range, Oscar Hemming, who's an absolute freight train of a winger and brings a lot of traits and a profile that we like a lot as a group.
Yeah, I've became a very big Oscar Hemming fan. I think he's maybe my favorite player in this entire draft. He's obviously had a weird year. Obviously, the contract situation in Finland. Then he signed to the BCHL, signed to Kitchener, and now for the winter or the spring semester, he's going to end up at Boston College. And at the time of this video, he's played 4 games and a couple good games, a couple quieter games. Maybe this past weekend at Providence wasn't as dominant as the holiday tournament that they played in, but Hemming is, I think Sebastian said it well, he's a freight train. And he wins battles. He's every contact skill in the books. He goes to the net. He's able to shed checks. He's a pretty dominant player when he's coming through the middle of the ice, filling the middle lane. His pace is ridiculous. There's room to add strength, add speed, add power to his game. He has half wall creation as well, like on the power play, 5-on-5. He's able to pull up, hit a seam, hit the weak side. He's a trigger guy as well on their power play, their top unit. So you add all this together into a profile, and he's raw. And Daniel mentioned he has timing issues, which I'm starting to see a little bit as well. But I think he could profile to the top of this tier by the end of the season. Like I think he has that kind of upside. Obviously, there's skewed results when a guy plays just a few games. Either they're, limited energy or they have a ton of energy because they haven't played at all. But yeah, I think Hemming versus Lawrence, I think you got two guys that are maybe going in different directions right now, different situations. Boston U maybe isn't as good of a team, but I would prefer Hemming slightly right now just because I think of the trajectory and the tools and the rawness, and I think the brain might be a little bit better at times as well inside of that profile. So I could go either way. Like I thoroughly enjoy both these players. It's just Hemming has became my favorite player in this draft.
Yeah, they're very different profiles, right? Like between these two players, I think it depends what we're going for. If we're going for special elements, Hemming is more unique. He's more special as a prospect. So if we're using that as our ideology for the rankings, I can understand going him over Lawrence. I still have Lawrence a decent bit ahead of Hemming just because I think he's a very, very easy to project 2C in the NHL. And I think I like his brain a bit more than Whitaker has this season. But yeah, if we're going special, Hemming has a boatload of tools, and the shot is ridiculous. He gets so much power with very little wind up, and we've seen some playmaking flashes already too in just a couple games in college hockey. So if we're banking on trajectory and special qualities, Hemming's got it, but it does hurt me a bit to see Lawrence potentially outside the top 10.
Yeah, this has been a really interesting development with Hemming. Like he was always a player who we kept lower, wanting for him to play some games this season, and it finally happened. But now we have a really small sample size. I mostly watched him last year, and last year I thought he was closer to his brother's profile, a rush shooter with a lot more physicality, more speed. What do you think of him last year, Lassie?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. He was pretty similar to his brother when he was draft -1. I've always liked the skill level. Always the shot has been his biggest weapon offensively, just like his brother. I didn't see the elite kind of physical skill that he seemingly added over the summer. But I also didn't. I caught him just a few times, so maybe the sample was just.
Yeah, I had some playmaking concerns with him, and I wasn't sure of his hockey sense this season. I don't really usually weight the Hinkla that much as a tournament because it takes from that tournament don't always age well from experience. But now we're seeing him in the NCAA, and I don't know if it's the energy of his coming back for a few games, like Whittaker said, but the playmaking concerns are not really there. He's making plays in tight spaces. On the half wall, he's deceptive. He can open lanes, and this is not what I was expecting. I was expecting speed and crushing ability and shooting and off-puck movements too, because he's someone who can find space very well to set up his shot. He stays connected to teammates. He had some flashes of hockey sense, but now you had the playmaking layer and the hockey sense layer, and he's someone who could rise massively if he continues to perform that way, because those players are special, who have speed, size, for checking, physicality, who can make plays in open ice and in tight spaces, who can run a power play from any spots really and have the shot. So yeah, he's a massive candidate to rise, and I would really like him ahead of Lawrence because the upside gap is pretty big for me, and he's a potential riser, a bit like Malhotra. It's conservative, I think, to put him at 10. He could go higher than this in the next board, but we need more of a sample size. We avoid pushing players up too fast and then walking back those stakes. So it's a step-by-step process. This is already pretty high, but he's a very, really exciting prospect, and you should watch him, I think. The next star, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
We're also talking about two August-born players here. So they're so close to being eligible for next draft. I think these two, it's gonna be it may flip back and forth here, but I agree. Go with the Hemming upside, based on the small sample. Yeah.
We just want to see more creation ability from Lawrence. It's something I expected him to add this season, but he's mostly someone who creates toward tools with his speed, with his handling, and work rate and pace. You want to see more manipulation and not play driving, but opening stuff that isn't there at first look. The next star is there's two players who have similar weighted votes. Two or three players. Adam Novotný, Viggo Björck, and Ryan Lynn, who I think are the next shorter tire. If we look at our collective boards and how they're shaping up. Jimmy, do you want to talk about Viggo Björck? I'm sure you want to talk about him.
Yes. My favorite player of this draft, I think. Just because every time I see him, he has never disappointed me in any game I've ever watched him over the last 2 years. He always do what he's supposed to do. He is extremely smart. He can play in every situation. Just watched a bit of his SHL game last night. He was running the power play for Djurgården, and he was deceiving the defenseman. He was faking a pass to one of the defensemen and got the penalty killer to move, and then he just played a simple pass to the slot for a great scoring chance and stuff like that all the time. And he's so strong too, for not just for his size. I think he's strong altogether. He had this. Many of us weren't so sure what he was going to be, I think, before the World Juniors, but then he stepped in there and had such a great tournament and was one of the best players all around. I think Cam had him as his MVP vote too. So just a fantastic player. I think he will be a good NHL player as well. The special with him is his hockey sense, I think, and you can pin him in any kind of role. I think he can play center, even if he's just 5'9". He's so good in all areas you need to be good as a center. So, yeah, he should definitely be a riser on our board, and I would even put him higher than this, to be honest. But I respect the democracy here of this ranking. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Viggo Björck.
Maybe just a follow-up question for Jimmy as well, because I did see you're clearly the highest on Björck, and you have him, like, you see him as a top 10 guy in your range,
Yeah.
and that's what you said as well. After hearing what we've talked about so far and your opinion on Björck, what do you think are is going to be his role in the NHL? How good is he going to be in the NHL? And based on what we've talked about so far, what do you think Björck brings that should get him into the top 10 conversation, even over the players we've talked about?
Yeah, I can definitely see him being a second line center without any problems, and a player that often when you talk about players that, are going to bring you playoff success and you can help you win, you often talk about big guys. I think Björck brings everything you want. He takes those face-offs on the power play, depending on what kind of team you has. He can play in almost any role there. He can drive from a circle. He can play the bumper role. I even seen him play, the point as a defenseman. And if you put him in the Edmonton Oilers, you can find a really good spot for him there between Draisaitl and McDavid, or in any other power play. So he's so useful in so many situations, and the coach at the NHL level gonna love him too. I'm not sure, I wouldn't put him like a top 5 guy. He doesn't have the special skill to be like a franchise driver first line center, but depending on how the team is structured, he could be a first line center too. But at least a really good second line center, I would say him to be in the NHL.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think I do see a lot of what you talked about, especially the hockey sense is obviously great and always has been. At the World Juniors, he was the number 1 center on a gold medal winning team, and then he came back and just started playing top line center in the SHL, which is really impressive too. Even when he was listed as the second line center, he played the most minutes. He plays 19 plus minutes every night, which is incredibly impressive. And even if I don't always necessarily see the elite skill level that would make him successful in the NHL, that does count for a lot, I think. The role that coaches trust him with already at this young age, and the things he does in the best league in Europe.
I've always been a big Björck fan, obviously. If he was a few inches taller, he would be top 5, I think, easily in this draft. Yeah, you'd hope to see maybe a bit more of that special dynamic ability for a guy his size, but I'm willing to bet on guys who are that great in terms of their processing ability, their overall sense, their ability to anticipate the game, and I don't think there are really any major weaknesses aside from his size, to be honest, at this point, because the physical game keeps improving, the motor is getting. It's always been pretty good, but now it's like good to very good. But obviously, there aren't many players in the NHL who are at his size, and even less who are like top 6 contributors. So, but if I'm comparing him to someone like Novotný, I think there's a pretty big hockey sense gap in favor of Björck. So based on what I've seen, I haven't seen Novotný in the OHL, but when he played in Czechia and then at the World Juniors and other international events, I think I would go with Björck. But obviously, there is that risk factor with him, even though I think he's, if you can call a 5'9" guy a safe bet, I think Björck has a pretty high floor in that regard as well. So I think he should be in this range for sure.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be fine in the NHL. Like you said, he has the hockey sense, he has the motor. The skating has improved a lot as well. But yeah, like you said, there are not that many comparables, especially if you compare with bigger guys like Adam Novotný and the other guys we've ranked ahead of him, like Oscar Hemming and Tynan Lawrence. So yeah, that's the reason why I was a little bit lower, but I'm comfortable with having him in that range because in terms of skills, that's where he belongs, I think.
Another argument is that I think Adam Novotný is going to be Adam Novotný no matter which team he ends up in. I think with Björck, you're going to have an organization that really values him and wants to use him in the role he would be good in. There are a few comparables, but there are some comparables. And Viggo Björck's case, like Zach Benson and Marco Rossi. But even if you look at Marco Rossi, he's someone who was kind of effective in his role top line next to Kaprizov for quite a while. He was producing and supporting and driving the play to an extent, but his GM kept wanting to trade him, and now he's gone. And was he going to have the same success in Vancouver? I don't know. There's kind of an artificial ceiling on these kinds of players because they're not always trusted in every environment, and that's unfortunate. But when you make a list that's not for a team like us, you kind of have to predict the future and think, are all of these players going to get equal opportunity? And in the case of Viggo Björck, I think some teams are going to absolutely love him and play him early, even as soon as next season or the season after, and really push him up in roles. And other teams are going to look at him and think, yes, he's very good, but is there a bigger player who could fill the similar role, be just as effective, and look for that on the market and maybe make a wrong trade? Not in the case of Minnesota. This is not what I'm saying, but in other cases, putting someone that's larger in that role that might not be as effective as Björck. And the other thing, just to finish my devil's advocate case, I think the hockey sense is good to great. It's mostly based on details for me than true creation ability at 5-on-5 in terms of creativity, like shifting defenders and creating space for teammates and lanes that are not there at first look. And he can do that to an extent. It's not Stenberg level. So I think when I say hockey sense and I talk about hockey sense, it's really the ability to influence the game. And I think Björck has that, not to an elite level, but high end. So his profile fits with some comparables, not with everyone. Oh, last thing on this, Mitch said something yesterday that really made me think, and that's Ryan Lynn is basically Viggo Björck on defense. He's all details in defensive zone, the way he uses his stick, his angles, the way he establishes body positioning on opponents, anticipates rotation ahead of the play. He tries to make plays under pressure and join the rush. And he can create at the offensive line and create offensively, but it's not that super elite tire that like Xavier Villeneuve, where you think, oh, he's going to be a pure offensive producer at the next level. It's more someone who can fill a supportive role with that extra layer of offense and the details, the motor. There's a pretty big fit there in terms of board arrangement, having Viggo Björck and Ryan Lynn next to each other. The votes are definitely in favor of Novotný ahead of Lynn, though. We should just talk a bit about Novotný still. Lauren, what do you think of him?
Yeah, Novotny's really grown on me since like I didn't know anything about him at the start of the season, and he's quickly become one of my favorite players to watch in the class. The skating ability, like the down low ability, just a really impressive all around player with a really versatile skill set. He's scoring in one of the most unfavorable environments in the entire OHL in Peterborough. He's driving play. He is really just an impact player in every shift, whether it's in the offensive zone or the defensive zone. So he has continued to climb, not only like, I mean, he could very well climb into like top 10 conversation if he continues to have a really strong second half. And now he's finally in a situation in Peterborough where he has some more skill to work with on that top line. With some of the acquisitions they made at the trade deadline. So if he has a really big second half, I could easily see him climbing into the top 10.
He's insanely good. Like, I think he's one of the better defensive players in the entire draft. He's agile, he's skilled, dynamic in moments. Um, I thought his World Juniors, like, even though he was the most snake-bitten player on earth, he was incredible. Like, he had some puck dragging shifts at the end of games that just sealed it up for Czechia. Like, it was just really, really impressive. He's so mature. He has size. He's like 6'1", 205. Um, Drives play a lot in the OHL. Like, there's just a ton to like about him, other than the fact that he's a winger, right? Like, and like personally, I value him more than Bjork just because um I think that the hockey sense gap is pretty close, and he probably has a more complete game overall and an easier time to translate to the professional game in North America. But I understand the love for Bjork too because of he just beats up people with his brain, especially when he has the space to do it. But Novotny is, I think, a special player in this draft and a guy that could go up higher as the season goes on here.
Yeah, I have Novotný ahead as well. The physical details, I really like the board to middle game. And his shot, he has a really, really good shot as well. So yeah, I personally would have Novotný ahead of Bjork.
It's also a
Maybe we
bit.
can also hear, sorry, maybe we can hear one guy who's known Novotny for a long time before this season. Hansa, do you want to add anything on him, both on how you saw him going into the year and comparing that to what you've seen from him now, especially at the World Juniors?
Yeah, I agree with all is said about Novotny. He's showing how his game could be complete. And comparing from the last year, I said in the last meeting, he's showing more of playmaking ability, more of the battles on the wall, and yeah, I think like everything what said is true, and I like him. I'd not be surprised if we end up in the top 10 later on the season.
There's also an impact of environment here in terms of how we see their hockey sense. Just quickly, Mitch, you want to talk about Peterborough and how it's affecting Novotny and how he's still thriving in that environment and how you see these three players?
Well, if you like short range passes, Peterborough is the place for you. There are no cross slot passes. It is purely from the wall to the circle and then a one timer. That's about as good as it gets there. Navani has added kind of an interesting element to how they play because normally it's just kind of like whip the puck in, use the fact that the boards are weird in Peterborough, and then try to get someone with like a sharp angle shot. Navani is much more of a play driver. He wants to carry the puck through the neutral zone with speed. He wants to fake outside pressure, try to get to the middle, try to find someone across the slot. So it's not surprising that he's having some level of scoring success. The thing is if you were to put him in almost any other OHL environment, he'd probably have already eclipsed 50 points just by the sheer volume of offense that he creates, and a lot of it is by getting off the wall. Um, I think when you look at Navani, he's not going to be a star in the NHL. But, Colorado doesn't win without Arturi Lehkonen in the lineup. And that's pretty much what Navani's going to be in the NHL. A guy who can win pucks, get them to the middle, score from distance if necessary, but he's probably going to score most of them by paying the price in front of the net. And he annoys the crap out of everyone by simply just outworking them. So I think he's going to be a top six complementary player, probably more on your second line. If he's on your third line, he's probably more of playing in a driving role. And then with Lynn, uh, basically what David said, and basically what everyone has said about Bjork can pretty much apply to him on the defensive side. I think the real thing that we're looking for with Lynn when he gets healthy and is back in the lineup is more offensive drive. He does have a lot of production, but most of it is from the power play or through short range passing. There are flashes though where he wants to work the give and go to get off the point, where he wants to get off the point and set someone up backdoor. He's trying more one-on-one plays. He's trying to be a more complex, more nuanced attacker. And so the question is, will he have enough time this season to flesh that side of the game out completely? Because if it comes mid-February and he's making those plays and the skill level looks a lot better, Ryan Lynn is going to rise up our board pretty considerably because he might be 5'11", but now you have a high-end shutdown projection combined with an offensive driver.
So this is the end of this grouping. The next one is three players again. Malte Gustafsson, Oliver Suvanto, and Daxon Rudolph. Yannick, do you want to lead a debate between the first two?
Sure. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I personally have Gustafsson ahead of Šmits at this point, purely based on Gustafsson's development over the past few weeks. Ever since he made the move up to the SHL, he's been playing big minutes at the pro level in the toughest league in Europe, and really been thriving there. I do see some of the concerns that have been brought up with how he handles back pressure on retrievals, how maybe his skating isn't quite at the real high end for an NHL projection yet. But I do think he looks like a player who still has a ton of growth to do. He still looks quite raw in the way he moves. He looks like someone who can add a lot of, especially lower body strength and improve that way. But at the same time, the way he defends and shuts down plays is already elite. Like he's only had a few games at the SHL level, but he's already really an elite shutdown player. The way he can surf on rushers and rub them out into the boards, get real physical, aggressively pressure them in the neutral zone and the defensive zone. I think all of that is really impressive. So for me personally, for Gustafsson, this is the low end of where I put him at 15. But I also know some of you guys see it a bit differently, so I'll definitely let you guys make your case as well. But the next one is Oliver Suvanto. Maybe we can talk about him first and then go into more of a discussion between those two. Suvanto, obviously, he's one of the youngest players in this class, but also a really big guy who's playing center in Liga at the pro level. He's played at the World Juniors. He's been a part of Finland's under-20 national team. And basically, ever since being a standout at the Holinka for Finland with the U18s, he did return to the U18 national team and isn't really expected to because he's a big part of the under-20s and at the pro level. So what he's done as a really mature two-way player at a really young age has been extremely impressive. So maybe we can start with Jimmy on Gustafsson and then have Lassi talk about Suvanto in comparison with Gustafsson.
I agree with what you said. Gustafsson is a type of defenseman that always seems to turn out well. I think the big guys loves to activate, loves to drive. I think the big improvement since last ranking, which was 15, so it would be weird if we put him lower than the last ranking, since I think he has improved a lot since then. He is really activating in the SHL, taking the pucks, skating with the pucks. He doesn't stand still or get in trouble with the forecheck as much. He, as you said, he's aggressive too. He uses his big body. He needs a lot of detail. He needs to be a lot more detailed in many. So that's the raw part, I guess. He still uses like his hands when he shut down players and so on. But this guy is gonna just get better and better. As he looks now, he should have been on Sweden's World Junior team, I think. But he hadn't really shown that late November when they started to pick the team. So I get why he wasn't on there. So he's developing fast. You see guys like, I don't know, Broberg, Edvinsson. They need time. They're raw, but sooner or later they're in the NHL and making an impact. And I really see that Gustafsson could be that type of defenseman too. So I really think that teams are going to pick him, could pick him pretty high in the draft.
Lassie on
Yeah.
Suvanto and Gustafsson?
Yeah, I mean, Suvanto he's been the same player since our last ranking. I don't think there's really been any real movement in one direction or another. He was the fourth line center at the World Juniors for Finland, a role that suited him really well because the defensive side of his game and battling ability and net front play and board play, out muscling the defenders and protecting pucks. That's really been his entire game at the league level, and he did really well on the penalty kill, I thought especially. And he had a few offensive moments here and there, but couldn't really do that much, I guess, getting off the wall or showcasing any of those high-end playmaking moments. I think with him, the floor still is really high. Has a good chance of becoming a third-line center in the NHL. Could he become a middle six guy? Maybe, but I think I'd really want to see him playing against his peers first, because you don't really expect him to display those high-end playmaking moments or stuff like that when he plays in a fourth line role at the World Juniors or in league with even if his team is very good and the environment is very good. He's mostly still been the shutdown guy. So if he plays in February's under 18 tournament, that's something that I really want to see. Or then hopefully at the U18s, at least we get to see whether he has that kind of middle six upside worthy skill and playmaking level. But I've also been really impressed with Gustafsson's SHL play. So I think 15 is definitely on the low end of my range as well. So just the defensive upside and the transition play has also been quite impressive. He struggled a bit in my first viewing, and then he just got immediately better after that at managing the puck and retrievals and breakouts. So I think there's a pretty clear top four defenseman in the NHL, maybe number 4 at least, maybe number 3, and I think that should probably be valued higher compared to a high floor, moderately low upside player like Suvanto, unless things change in the future.
And I think that's another example, these two guys, of what we talked about in the beginning in terms of development trajectory from the start of the season to now, where Gustafsson is a guy who at the start of the season played some under 18 games, played a lot of under 20 games, was just okay in some of them. And now looking at where he is in January in the SHL and what he's doing and playing between 15 and 20 minutes in the SHL is extremely impressive. Whereas Suvanto, he's one of the younger players, but at the same time, one of the most physically developed players, probably. And he started out at a pretty high level, playing Liga minutes right from the start. And maybe he hasn't been bad. He's been good. We've liked him all season. But he's not shown that high development trajectory. So that's another reason why I'm kind of personally fine with Suvanto in this range somewhere, whereas Gustafsson for me is just on the move up, and 15 is more on the low end. But maybe we can go to Daniel to get a crossover opinion on those guys.
A lot of what I was thinking about them was already said. I think you go with what Yannick said with Gustafsson just excelling over time. I really love Suvanto. I think he's a tank. I think he's one of the better puck protectors in the draft, and he's like a safe projection to be an NHLer. But when you're talking about like a 6'4" defender who is rapidly improving and has flashes of, uh, even though the volume of the offensive flashes are very low right now, they still exist. I think that's really intriguing for this spot, and probably the way that we should go. Suvanto's pretty like cut and dry in my opinion of what he is. So I kind of like the upside and the certainty of the defender who's going to get a lot of opportunity to reach that potential because NHL teams are going to play 6'4" defenders who skate well and are active.
Absolutely, and Gustafsson is already one of the good rush defenders in this draft class. Like you said, he's going to be playing. I'm not worried about that. Suvanto, like Yannick said, he's one of the youngest players in this whole draft. He's almost a year younger than Stenberg and players like that. So I think he has tons of runway. I'd like to see more offensively, but the runway's there and the physical details are there. But I think there are other players that we have on the list that could also be in that conversation. I don't know, maybe Daniel, do you want to talk about Rudolph?
Rudolph is uh like he's a low motor operator, so he just kind of goes about his game. He's a bit of a volume shooter off the line. He's a strong rush defender. He's big at 6'2". He's also a right hand shot, so there's a lot going for him. His when he has offensive flashes, they're like crazy level. Like he's like deking guys up the middle and scoring in the hash marks and stuff. Um, I think I think I'd rather have the higher motor uh the higher motor guy in Gustafsson over him. But Mitch knows Rudolph a lot better than me, so he can talk about him if he wants.
Yeah, pretty much everything you said. I think with Daxon, it's all going to be about can he add the pace and can he add the physicality. The skill is there, and we'll see more playmaking in a different environment as his game matures. He is skill for skill, right there with Chase Reid and Keaton Verhoeff in the draft class. It purely comes down to what can he provide outside of the power play. And he's on an absolute heater right now. And sometimes what we see at this age is guys get hot on the score sheet and then suddenly the rest of their game starts clicking too. And so I'm hoping with Rudolph that he can evolve his defensive game past having a really good stick and can start stepping up on guys in the neutral zone, timed with the pass, being more physical, taking guys harder into the wall, and showing a little bit more urgency on breakouts. But I think this is probably the floor for him at this stage. I think we put him at 17, and that's probably as low as he can go, given what he's doing, the track record, and of course the fact that he's the number one defenseman on a terrific WHL team, and looks like he's and has a real chance of being a PP1 guy in the NHL.
Yeah. I really see him as someone who's going to be an offensive driver in the NHL, someone who's going to need the right spot to shine too, because if they ask of him to be a shutdown guy and use his size, I don't think it's going to go that well. Someone who's very inclined in one aspect of the game and not assertive enough and not aggressive enough on the other side, but high offensive upside in terms of skill. There's a kind of gap between him and Gustafsson, even if his skating is not perfect. But yeah, I think it's the right call to have Suvanto at 16. I don't know if it's worth anything, but I have such a strong gut feeling for Suvanto, like someone who could maybe even rise to a top six role if his game continues to develop. Just like the easy plug and play center who could make creative line mates better and just find a spot as second line guy, still scores a bit of points and use his playmaking in tight spaces and protect the puck. A lot of runway, but I agree with Yannick. He's very physically filled out, so it's a nice contrast between the date of birth and his actual form. Interesting player to follow. And now we're about to go into a bigger tire for the end of the first round or close to the end of the first round. There's a lot of names to discuss here that have about a similar value. I think the logical name for the 18 overall is Yegor Shilov. Just a quick word before I relate this to Hattie, but there's a lot of elements of his profile that reminds me of Rudolph too, in the being highly skilled and be able to influence the game offensively, but being a bit of a low motor prospect who still positions well to an extent on the defensive side. So there's a bit of a parallel there, and they're might be right next to each other on this board. So this is always nice when it fits. Hattie, what do you think of Shilov?
Yeah, I've soured a tiny bit on him, mainly because the very infrequent flashes of moving his feet have just essentially disappeared as of late. Which isn't ideal. You want this player to be able to make plays in motion because when he does it, he looks dynamic, he looks insane. But as of late, it seems like the effort level has gone down, not up, which is the opposite of what you want with this player. So I'm not really entirely sure if he would be the next person off the board for me. I think of a couple of guys that I'm really high on that I've watched lately, and like Ryder Cali. I'm still relatively high on Pantelas, although I haven't watched him as much. Jaxon covers another one. Like, there's a couple of guys who have that higher end effort that I'm looking for. But when Shilov's on, I mean, you're talking about a player who can see passes like no one else, who can thread together plays, who excels at that low pace playmaking. You know, finding passes from a glide. And you have the hands, which are among the top in this draft class. He's got a really good release as well. The skill level across the board is really good. But you want to see more effort out of him. And obviously, he's playing in an unfavorable environment in Victoriaville. Um, but you think playing with Vlasov, playing with, guys like Korneev, guys who do work hard would kind of push him to add that layer to his game and kind of join them on those efforts. But he's more than content letting Vlasov and Korneev just run the forecheck and sit there as an F3. I don't know if that's a situational thing where he's being coached to do that. I'd be entirely shocked because Victor loves their hard workers. So the question is, how confident are we that he adds that layer of pace and motor that makes him an NHLer? Because he definitely has the skill for it to be, if he does add those layers, to become a top six player in the NHL. Maybe not a center, but that's up for debate. But for me, it's just he needs to add that layer. How confident are we that he adds that layer? I'm not very confident since I've seen it go down lately, so that's more of a team discussion, I think. That's where I stand on Shilov. I'd put him in the 20 to 26, 28 range.
The thing is that there's also a bit of uncertainty with the players that are behind him too. We're entering this range where it's high upside and lower floor, or a mix of
Yeah.
upside and certainty. And with Shilov, he has a scoring which separates him from other prospects like Cover. He's been playing for longer than someone like Wyatt Cullen. And Shilov, we've seen flashes of physical engagement, and he has the skating ability to play at a higher pace. It's not an issue of skating; it's purely an issue of motor and the way he wants to operate. And the skill level is like top 10, top 5 in this draft. He
It's
can
ridiculous,
cut,
yeah.
yeah, he can cut through defenses like they're not even there. Like it's crazy the processing speed inside those really tight spaces, and he can find plays out of his carries through the neutral zone. He's an automatic power play entry guy, so a lot of skill. He could drop further if there is no improvement in his game toward the end of season, but I think right now, respecting
Yeah.
upside, it's him there. And we have a lot of players to discuss still.
Yeah.
Mitch,
Just
do you want to separate some of these guys?
just to close things off on Shilov real quick. We've already dropped him 7 spots.
Yeah.
So I think I'm content with that.
Yeah, so I think we have a couple questions here. We have a group of pretty similar upside, and in the cases where it's not, they have the very high certainty, like an Ilia Morozov. So I think we have two different angles we can go here. We can just go who is the most skilled guy, or we can just go who do we think is the most likely to be impactful and also has the upside with them. Because if we go by that second one, then Nikita Klepov is the next guy up for sure.
I would agree massively with this. I think he has both upside and certainty. He could has that big game where he can fill a kind of forechecking role in a bottom six, but also one of the best shots in the draft, flashes of high-end playmaking, and he can change space and make plays and connect with teammates. Lauren, what do you think of Klepov and Cover? Yeah.
Sure. So Klepov, he was so good at the OHL Top Prospects game. Like he was making plays out of his mind. Like, I don't know where that has been in Saginaw for the last 2 months, but it came back in a big way, and I think he's taken that confidence and brought it into the next couple of games that he played with Saginaw over this weekend. Like, he's been really good as far as like the facilitating, seeing plays that a lot of other players can't, manipulating defenders. Yeah, just like the play that we saw from him a lot in the last few months has been that B game that you mentioned, David, the forechecking, the defensive reads, the pushing pace, but not really necessarily the high-end offensive vision that was pretty prominent back in like October, November. And now that that's reemerged in his game, he's even more of an offensively dominant threat. So as far as like upside goes, if he can maintain that level of production and the kind of plays that he's executing and seeing, like I would have no problem with him in this spot. And then as far as Cover goes, he's a little bit raw in the sense of offensive generation goes. Obviously, he had a later start to hockey that we've already addressed, but he was also making plays like crazy at the OHL Top Prospects game, even if they weren't nearly as successful and resulted in a few turnovers, misplays. That's going to be natural with a player trying to figure out how to be like a play driver at the next level. And he's poised to have some really big minutes and play a big role with London down the stretch now that they've traded away half their team. So he could also be a guy to watch out for in the second half, as having that really kind of offensive breakout, especially with more consistent minutes. I think they're both kind of betting on upside. I think Cover has a little bit more, I guess, like I see a little bit more high-end skill from him, but Klepov might be a little bit more refined at the moment.
And what do we think of the European prospects here? Common, Shcherbakov, Hermansson.
Yeah, I mean, we are as a staff still quite high on some of those guys. We don't all agree on all of them, but we still have Hermansson quite high, Piiparinen too, who I think fell a bit on this first draft of this board based on crossovers, and the weighted rankings aren't quite as kind as the high end of our European staff. And Command, we had him quite high on the last ranking at 19, and he's probably still kind of in that range. He, I don't think, has taken massive steps forward. But yeah, maybe Lassi, do you want to talk about the guys? I think Hermansson, Piiparinen, and Command are probably the highest for us.
Yes, Piiparinen, I think he's in a bit of an unfortunate situation because he plays on such a good team that he's now playing like 4 to 10 minutes a game in Liga, but they're still playing him pretty much exclusively there. He didn't play at all the games at the World Juniors, but when he played, I thought he looked quite good. He looked like he could handle that pace of play, and his defense looked pretty good. He was moving the puck well. He was using the middle a lot, which has been a trend that I like. He can hook pucks from the boards, even under pretty big pressure to the middle on breakouts. And I think he didn't get to show much offense there, and he doesn't get to show it much in Liga either. But I've seen some playmaking flashes that make me intrigued, and he's a bit of a safe guy, I guess. The upside is maybe not that exciting, but he's still pretty big. He's right-handed, and I think he belongs in this range definitely. Hermansson would be the big swing on skill out of these Europeans. I've liked him quite a bit in the Hockey Allsvenskan, and his tools are really good, maybe even based on those, he should be in the top 15 conversation. But there are still some sense-related concerns. He looks a bit like Oscar Olausson did back in his draft year, and looking where he is now, that is a bit concerning to me. Command is, on the other hand, he's maybe slightly more projectable in many ways, especially given his competitiveness and physical play. But as Yannick said, I don't think he's shown that much since our last ranking in November, so I wouldn't mind. We were quite aggressive on him, so if he slips to the 20s, that's okay with me. And then Shcherbakov, I think the highs are really high with him. I've seen some great offensive flashes from him in my recent viewings in the junior ranks, even though it's funny because his points are mostly point shots that get deflected. But then when he's setting up cross-lot backdoor looks, then he's not getting points from those, which is unfortunate. But I still really like the tools package there, the skating and the size and the offensive flashes, if he can build upon those. But I think if you compare him to Piiparinen, then Piiparinen has the edge in terms of his decision making, and I think the defensive soundness is a bit more there with him. But and also Shcherbakov's development environment might not be ideal. If he moves to North America, then that's a different deal. But yeah, that's what I think of those pairs.
Jimmy, what do you think about the Swedes?
I mean, in similar, I think I don't have a lot more to add. I think I have command over, at least long term, over Hermansson. I think the skill gap isn't that much between them. I really like the skill of command, but he doesn't have like the pure speed yet. I think his skating technique should make him a faster player when he gets stronger and more so. But as of now, he separates opponents mostly with his physical play and in his puck skills. So I like him more long term. But as of today, I think Hermansson has played really good in Allsvenskan, and I think they're both in the 20s guys. So they're pretty close. But if you want more certainty, I would pick command over those two. Hermansson is more like top 6 or bust kind of player.
And I think for the European staff, based on the conversations we had before, if the next 4 guys were Hermansson, Piiparinen, Command, and Shcherbakov, we'd be happy with that. But obviously there are North Americans as well who are reasonable in this range. So maybe a general question for everyone. Because for me, it feels a bit like there's a bit of a drop-off. Up until at least 17, we had guys some of us were really excited about. We have guys like Björck at 13, who Jimmy was really excited about. I at 15 was really excited about Gustafsson. We have those really exciting prospects still. Is there anyone left here where you would say it's not just a player who's reasonable to go in this range, but someone who you think you're really excited about, even if it's just gut feel, but something is there any player that has something that you're super excited about where you think he should be the next guy on the board?
I read some great reports
Morozov, Klepov, Cullen, Cover, all of them.
I like 10 guys.
Yeah,
who are you most excited about?
Like for me, Pantelas. I think dropping Pantelas as far as he has in this preliminary thing is frankly a little insane. Most competitive defenseman in the draft class, insane work rate, great rush defender, even on the penalty kill. I think the skill level isn't great, but he makes a ton of plays. I think he's pretty easily, like, he's a layup to be an effective NHL defenseman. And even despite being in the very, let's say, strange and stretched Brandon Wheat King's environment, he's managed to continue making plays offensively, setting up chances, leading the rush. Um, and then Morozov, I mean, this is Suvanto just playing NCAA hockey. Everything that you guys have said about Suvanto, it's the exact same thing. He's very young for the draft class. He's big. He's physical. He goes hard to the net. He wins a ton of battles. He's not in a great situation, but he's their number one center. Um, and he is going to get at least one player on his line an NHL entry level contract this summer. That's how good he's been this year.
Going by that logic, we seem to be awaiting certainty and B game a bit more than just pure upside. There are some groupings in here that's it's a bit hard to separate, but we see some groupings like Jaxon Cover, Wyatt Cullen, Mathis Preston, and Elton Hermansson. They're top 6 projection with not as much of a floor, even though it's kind of there for some of them. Like Cover could become a forechecker because he has some physical abilities, and that separates him from maybe Cullen and Preston, but he's really not scoring and stuck in a low minute role in the London Knights. So, but I would debate those guys against each other. That might help where you rank them. But so far, what I'm hearing is that we want to value a bit more certainty. So maybe we can discuss just putting Morozov there because of the floor and ceiling might be closer together. But like Suvanto, put him in an NHL middle 6 next to good playmakers, and he's going to play his role well and drive the play and play defensive game, play along the walls. He's very similar to Suvanto, just Suvanto has more freedom of skill, I think, and it's a pretty small gap for everything else.
Yeah, like skill's definitely the big limiter with Morozov, but the middle 6 projection's been clear from his first game this season in college hockey. He's really middle driven, very physical. As you said, he plays his role meticulously every single game. He adopts the positions his team needs him to be in, defensively very engaged. The skating and handling combination isn't very great, but it doesn't need to be with the style that he plays. He's a connector, he's a facilitator, he's not a puck carrier first and foremost. And what I saw from Suvanto at the World Juniors was also quite similar to what my impression of Morozov has been here this season. I'm definitely more excited by Wyatt Cullen as a prospect, but there's more risk associated to him. I'd still have him over Morozov, but if we're going on likelihood of playing significant minutes in the National Hockey League, Morozov should be the next North American guy off the board that I'm familiar with.
Shcherbakov. Well, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to be much lower either because he's a 6'5", like beanpole defender with a ton of physical runway. He skates well. He has dynamic flashes. Yes, the production really isn't there compared to what he shows, but I think the biggest knock is what Lassie said, environment and what's going on with that. But like, he's a guy. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to be separated from the other bigger defenders that we have on the board. And Hermansson, I think like crossover is kind of mixed on him. I really like him. I think he's like an excellent off the puck shooter and supporter. I think there is sense issues like mentioned, and I think he plays smaller than what he is. There's not a lot of physical skill, but when you're looking at like top 6 scoring upside, I think he's one of the guys there. But I agree with like command being over him. And then there's also Mathis Preston and Liam Ruck in the mix too. So
can you talk about them?
Preston's like a burner, right? Like he's super, super high paced, very, very skilled individually. I think the biggest questions are just around his sense, his ability to recognize the best play, and play, connected with his line mates. And I think that's what's kind of limited him this year. He's injured right now, and I think it isn't as bad as everyone thought, so he'll be coming back later on the Giants. But in terms of individual skill, he's one of the more he's one of the higher upside guys available. And then Liam Ruck is kind of like a higher floor guy. He's extremely intelligent, both offensively and defensively. A lot of small area plays, a lot of large area plays, one touches. Like he processes really, really quickly, and he's a driver on one of the best teams in the WHL. Definitely a range that he needs to be in. I think you'd take the special guy in Preston over Ruck, even with the huge sense gap right now, but that could change in the future.
And we have a newcomer in this top 32, Wyatt Cullen.
Yeah, I love Cullen. I know Sebastian does as well. He had an excellent showing up at the CHL USA Challenge in Lethbridge in Calgary. He's pretty dynamic handler. He's able to get to the middle of the ice. I think he has one of the best heads up handling habits in the draft. He's able to evade checks, pull up, play on the rush, play in transition, spin off guys on the cycle. He's a very dynamic player. He's got a shot too. He's able to move off the puck and create trigger chances off the shot. So he also just had an MVP performance at the All-American game, so he's starting to stack now. He grew this summer quite a bit. He's a September birthday, I think. So he's a trajectory guy for sure. And I think in this range, we have some skill guys, we have some floor guys as well. But I think Cullen has definitely became a first round pick, and I think I could see him anywhere really in this range. Cover, similar type of player. Preston, I think Cullen might be, trending in the right direction, where Preston might be going in the wrong direction right now. He's just such a dynamic player, dynamic handler, sees the ice well. He's got a shot. I like Cullen a lot.
I'm a big fan too. Like with Cullen, it's not just the skill. Like obviously the hands are ridiculous, the mobility's great. He's a very pacey rush attacker, but he's a player that can also really get involved in the forecheck. The couple extra inches that he added to his frame have really helped him, especially against USHL competition. We've seen him get boxed out more easily against opponents like Michigan State, who play just a very structured, physical game. But even in those matchups, he finds his moments where he can really make something happen, especially in terms of getting the puck from the boards to the middle of the ice. Like he's not your prototypical boards to middle player in how he does it, but he's really evasive, really good timing, I think, with when he decides to cut back against the grain of pressure. And he's a player where I see significant offensive potential, but he's able to also chip in defensively on the forecheck. Defensive zone, he's been kind of more gliding around. I think it has also a lot to do with his role with the NTDP, where he's kind of just the first guy as soon as they get the puck who starts sprinting it back up towards the offensive zone to create something off the rush. So they're asking him, I think, to conserve his energy a little bit more, but he has it in him as well to be a high motor guy defensively, but he'll always be tilting a bit more offense than defense too.
I like how we are ordering them in this range right now. I don't know if everyone likes it, but it's going to be a compromise range. We have at 20, 21, 22, some players who are surely going to play in the NHL just because of their tools, and they have a very scalable game, I think. Shcherbakov has more uncertainty with his path forward, but he's a large defenseman with skating ability and defensive habits and flashes of offense. Pantelas is the same in the motor, like Mitch said. And then Jaxon Cover and Wyatt Cullen, there's a lot of parallel between those two players. Top six upside. Cover is not playing enough to really have a great read on his game, and he just started competitive hockey like 5 years before. So there's a lot of runway with him and physical game. Cullen, that might just be a pit stop on his way further up the first round if he continues to be just as dynamic of the rush and be able to manipulate defenders and make plays that are very special in the moment too. Common and Liam Ruck, there's a bit of parallel there too. They are a bit lower paced forwards, but with somewhat projectable physical game. There's even if Ruck is a bit smaller, they can make plays to teammates that are pretty not special, but they're pretty high end still. And Mathis Preston is just it's just as dynamic as Carver and Cullen. It's just he's training in the wrong direction, so it continues his not his fault on our board, but we're more conservative with our placement. In terms of crossover on Piiparinen, um, it's just that I personally see him more as a bottom pairing projection from what I've seen. The tools are good, not exceptional. He can move the puck, but make some mistakes too. He has some offensive moments, but they're not consistent. The physicality is there, but not in every game. I'm not sure what he's going to be at the next level, despite having a bit of everything. Maybe a number 4, but it feels more a bit more uncertain than Pantelas, who's a mean physical guy on top of being extremely confident offensively and he's getting minutes. And Shcherbakov, the tools are special. So this feels correct to me to an extent. It can't always be. What do you guys think?
I think it's fine. We're probably low on Piiparinen. I think like I personally have him ahead of the other Europeans in this group, and I think as a 6'3", 200-pound right shot defenseman who's pretty mobile and can make some plays with the puck, I think he's going to go higher than we have him. But he needs to show more, which, like Lassi said, is difficult in the environment he's in. Just playing on a really good Liga team. But he needs to show a bit more to move up. So it's probably fine.
He's
I don't
like
think it changes much,
he's
but yeah.
like my problem with him is that I don't see a lot of like upside there. Like he's like extreme. It's like extreme effort and activity level, and that's where I kind of differ, just with I guess with Piiparinen's projection. Like he's just for me, he's just kind of like a try hard, without the skill to really take him, take his projection to something higher than like a bottom pair guy.
I think it's probably an uneasy compromise on every single placement
Yep.
in the 20 to 29 range, to be completely honest. Just looking at the variance that we have between all these players and how everyone has a different order. Like I was just going through the rankings and it just seems like it's different for everyone how they'd have them. So I think as long as we feel like there's a clear philosophy behind it, then we just move on.
We feel like Hermansson is more skilled than Carver, Cullen, or Preston.
I don't think so. Over's like nuclear skilled, and I haven't watched a ton of Cullen, but it seemed like he was too.
Yeah, they have top 10 caliber skill.
Yeah, Cover and Cullen are definitely the most skilled players.
Preston too.
Yeah, Preston too. But
I saw Cullen and Hermansson and Command live at the Five Nations in November, and Cullen was a guy who instantly stood out in warm-ups with the skill he had. Just his stick handling alone. And I felt like that didn't quite show as much in game, but I still liked him quite a bit. Whereas Hermansson he can be ultra deceptive in his playmaking, like at a really high level, which makes him look like a top 15 guy. But at the same time, he can also lack pace and just doesn't have the drive, doesn't have the physicality, and just very inconsistent. So I don't feel strongly enough about him to really go to bat for him at this point. I do think he has that top 15 player in him. He just doesn't show it very often. And with that, I think he's fine where he is for now. And we still have 5 months of hockey and debates, and I think we can probably move on with these guys, and they're all, like Mitch said, it's a compromise for everyone there in that range.
Is it the right place now for Borichev?
And Jacob, the stage is yours.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm the most high on Dmitri Borichev at the group. He is still my number one. I believe the person who ranked Borichev the highest would be Max, who has Borichev within the top 32. I have him just a bit outside the top 32. I think his game has pretty much stayed steady throughout the season. I think, generally speaking, his strengths remain strengths. That would be his technical proficiency, his transitions, especially off the post, his skating ability. He has some pretty good athleticism. I wouldn't say it's superb, but it's definitely a plus. And he doesn't have to use it a lot because he's generally very positionally able. And again, the technical proficiency is really strong. There are some minor issues with his game that hold him back from being sort of a true well-rounded goaltender, but he's very close to it. Like he gets very small in his butterfly, I've noticed, and he seems to struggle when it comes to tracking through screens. But apart from that, like he's very clearly, if you're going off of from a certainty and upside perspective, combining the two, he's for sure the number one guy in my opinion.
I did have Borichev the highest, so I'll speak a little bit on him too. Um, I think, the past couple of years, we've really seen goalies go at a premium. We had two go in the first round this last year, including Andrianov going 20th. And I think if you have a GM who's willing to use a first round asset on a goaltender, I think I'd definitely vouch for Dmitri Borichev. Like Jacob was saying, he's extremely technically strong, really good positionally, great stance. I love the way he holds his hands. He's got good hands overall, but I really like his poise. He's so poised. He's great at keeping his feet and remaining on his feet throughout pressure and in difficult scenarios. And then he also has, this emphasis on regaining them and not just playing from the butterfly, despite his butterfly play being really strong. I think his tracking is pretty good as well, but he also has just this amazing athletic toolkit, in my opinion. He's super flexible. He can get wide into his hips, get into the splits, but also he has good rotation to get a wide butterfly. And in those positions, while extended, while playing a wide butterfly, he's got really good body control. He's always keeping his chest up. When, he has to make a big save, you'll see him come across the net with speed, and he'll have his chest up, hands up, taking up a ton of net. But, obviously he's still playing in the NHL Silver Division this year. And I think that is hurting his stock among a lot of people because that is a lower level. But I think he's really shown the ability to play at a higher level. I was watching one play where, he's beaten to the back door and he's got to pivot and push really hard as he can and extend to get across. And he goes into like this full extension to try to make this big save. But he's playing NHL Silver. The guy can't get off that, quick one timer. And he notices that, he reads that play, and he can have the poise and the body control to pull himself back in, go from this wide extended position to sealing up all the holes and take pucks right to the chest. And plays like that and how aware he is, how technically sound he is with the classic Russian athletic toolkit makes me think he's about as good as a prospect in a goaltender you can get outside of those blue chip guys like Askarov and Wallstead, who he can't quite touch. But like goaltenders going at a premium, I think it's very reasonable to see a goalie like Borichev go off the board in the first round.
I know David Phillips is the goalie scout who is the most suspect on Borichev. Can you talk about sort of your hesitancy and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, for me, like Borichev, he's obviously very technically sound, and he has like the ability to make a lot of saves, especially at the NHL silver level. But I think a lot of the other goalies I've seen kind of have something more special about their play. Like you look at Tobias Trejbal, and he's just a ridiculous athlete, and he's 6'4", and he catches right-handed, which is, unique in its own way. And then you have guys like Parker Snell, who I think really reads the game and understands it at a lot higher level than some guys like Borichev. For me, I'm not really high on his play reading at all, just because I think he never really has to use it that often because like the teams he's playing, like Tynan, they just don't have the shooting skill that some of these other goalies face all the time. But I'm definitely going to keep monitoring Borichev as the season goes on. I watched him yesterday again, but it was against a silver team, and he had a 23 save shutout without any real big challenge. And then I don't know, like I could definitely see him being up there in the second round or high second, but I don't really see a first round caliber goalie. Just based on the fact that I liked Andrianov last year more, but I still had him in the late second rounds. So that's why I dropped Borichev a bit outside of that area.
Would you guys agree with high second round placement, mid second round placement? What's the right range?
I think high second round seems like the consensus throughout most of the goaltending team.
Yeah. I think
I mean,
sorry.
I could definitely see early second round. Like I can understand Max pushing for him to be a first rounder. I don't think I have him in like I wouldn't have him in the first round right now, but for early second, I think like if we take a look at like the top two goalies, I think most of us agree are like Borichev and Trejbal. Like those are the top two. I kind of can flip flop between the two of them, but I think that's only because Borichev hasn't played that many games in the MHL. He just missed a month of hockey, and we don't really know why. And he hasn't really been tested a lot, but I think Borichev does have the potential to be a first rounder. And but I don't think Trejbal has that. I think Trejbal just can't like he is what he is. I don't think he has the potential to be a first rounder, but like with more challenge, Borichev could become that. In my eyes, Max is already there. And so I think probably like should be an early to mid second rounder. Like I think this is a guy that like this is a really high end guy, like Max said. Like you're not going to find many prospects like who are on his level. Like this is like a Josh Ravensbergen kind of level prospect.
Liam, what do you think of Tobias Trejbal and sort of how he would project to the NHL level?
I mean, Trejbal projects really well. Like I look at Trejbal, I'm like, if this guy doesn't make it as an NHL goalie, I'd be completely shocked. Like he's got the size, skating and athleticism alone will give him the opportunity. It'll give him a long leash to develop. And I think like everything he does pretty much besides like intensity issues is on a very high level. Like he reads the play well. He's very, very fast skater. He just like his extensions, his athleticism, and like everything he does is on a high level. The major problem is that, the USHL is a better league than the MHL, but Youngstown is an awesome team. Like Trejbal will get 20 shots a night, and like maybe one of those could be dangerous. So that's like an issue of itself. And then, but like the intensity issues with Trejbal is like he just doesn't push hard sometimes. He just doesn't move like he should with any purpose. And that can be a really hard habit to break. And I don't know how well that's going to translate to the NHL. I mean, there are guys who are like calmer, who aren't as intense in the NHL, but it's still kind of, it's iffy because it can be a really tough habit because that's like a completely different play style to go from being way too calm and relaxed to actually playing more competitively. And I don't know if Trejbal has it. I have seen him a little bit, and like when he was like playing intensely, like he looked like an early, like a 35th overall pick. Like he looked like really good, but he just needs to be doing more of that, and he just isn't.
I will say there's also some decision-making issues in Trejbal's game. Sometimes you see him, his depth selection is just kind of mind-blowing at times, and he gives up goals because of it.
His save
I have seen
selection
that too.
is also
Yeah.
questionable.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else that you guys would consider to be potential top 64 goaltenders that you're particularly high on?
Well, Jacob, do you want to talk about Ainasto right now?
I might.
I think you should.
So Juuso Ainasto has quickly become perhaps one of my most favorite goalie prospects ever. Let alone in this class. He's just really came out of nowhere. First started playing in the Finnish U20 system in Jokerit at the end of November, and he's quickly taken over the starting role, and he's done pretty well. Recently, he just put up a stinker, so his save percentage is more on par with the rest of the Finnish U20 eligibles, but there's a lot to like. 6'4" frame, very, very clean in his sort of the way he controls his depth and challenges. I personally really like his skating, really like his athleticism, love his hands. Super engaged, an absolute battler. Not even 1 month into playing at the U20 level, and he's already doing shenanigans after the play. Like he's super engaged in the game, whether it's taunting the other team or it's just he's a hilarious goaltender to watch, and definitely one with plenty of confidence. And he's not just doing this stuff when he's up; he's doing it when he's down. Like he's battling through every single play. And while compete is it's something you definitely do want in a goaltender. You definitely don't want a goalie that's a bit too lackadaisical. Uh, there's some argument whether, to what degree that's important at the NHL level, especially for, the high-end technical guys. But it definitely at least shows that, like, if he's a hard worker on the ice, you could sort of translate that to being likely a hard worker off the ice. And even though his tracking was a bit suspect coming into the league, as he was making that adjustment, I've seen a lot of improvement there, and he has the anticipatory habits of, doing a lot of scans and generally being in the right place that I like to think that, that will continue to improve as the season goes on, as it has just in the month and a half that he's been there.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like you watch him, he's a 6'4" goalie. He's exceptionally quick for his size. Again, another super flexible goalie, very wide butterfly, can really extend out well and control his body and extension. His skating, I would say, is good, but not quite at the level of your Borichev, Trejbal, these kind of top guys. And that's his one almost limiting factor because it is still good, but it doesn't, to me, it limits him a little more against, Trejbal and Borichev. But I would still say he, with the athletic toolkit, he projects maybe as like a late second, early third rounder for me. But I think he's a really strong goalie overall.
I would say that his route selection makes up for the fact that his skating is not super high end. It's good, but it's not great. The fact that he
Yeah.
has that explosiveness and generally speaking, takes efficient routes, I think that makes up for it for sure. What about
I
you,
do think
Yannick?
that is something that does work good now, but might limit at the NHL level. You do need to be a good technical skater, but I would agree it's still like a strong trade, just not as quite as strong as Borchev or Trey.
I agree.
I agree with pretty much everything you've talked about for Borichev and Ainasto. Definitely, Ainasto is one of the most fun goaltenders to watch in this class, and he's so athletic, he's big, he's quick, does a lot of great things, and there might not be a more competitive goalie in Europe, at least from what I've seen. And Borichev still, to me, seems like the number one, at least for now. I think with what he's done so far, with what we've seen from him, consistency, size, athleticism, speed, he seems like the number one for me. But maybe a general side note on this, just based on how we rank players and where they end up going in the draft, when we talk about the ranges. If you do the exercise of using I mean, we're obviously not a team that uses our list to draft, but if we did, we would have come out with our 74th ranked player in the 7th round in the last draft. So basically, anyone out of the top 75, we'd never draft. And with that, I think we can be quite aggressive on the goaltenders. Like if we think a guy like Borichev is the best goalie in the class, or even the best out of Europe.
I think if that's the case, then it's definitely worth mentioning Carter Casey as well, despite being a guy who statistically has struggled, and sometimes it's a bit hard to watch him as a goalie scout because sometimes there's not much goalieing going on. But in terms of just pure athletic upside, I mean, on the best day, he's Jonathan Quick. On his worst day, he's Jonathan Quick in 2026. He's got the explosiveness, like he just genuinely he moves just like you really don't see anything like it. I think in terms of pure athletic upside, he's certainly my number one in the class. It's just if he goes to a team whose development, like who does not have a good developmental system, generally, takes guys and buries them for a while and hope that their teams develop. He's probably not sniffing the NHL, but if he goes to a team that is, not just confident in their ability, but do have the resources and are willing to sort of throw them at Adam, I genuinely don't know if there's a guy whose limit or whose potential is as high as him for sure in this goalie group.
I agree with that. Like, I think Carter Casey has the best raw potential in this goalie group. Like, pretty comfortably, but the certainty is just not there. Like he just doesn't stop pucks right now. That's just as simple as that. Like and it's mostly rooted in his awful stance, and he's double coveraging all the time. He gets really low, and like he'll have his gloves just like right inside his chest, and it makes him susceptible to shots anywhere on the net. But I still seen him, like his hands are still extremely good in my opinion. Like even like he just sets himself up for failure with his initial positioning, but his hands are super quick. His eyes are right on the puck. Like he does everything else right, but there's just like that one thing, that stance, and he's just like not controlling himself all the time. But his skating is elite. His athleticism is elite. He does every athletic trait. You can go down the entire list. Max could tell you all about it, and it's going to be a high level for Carter Casey. And one of the first games I ever watched of his is right early in the season. Like I think it might have been his second game. He got a 33 save shutout. It was the most perfect played game I've ever seen from a goalie prospect. And that was my first analysis of him, was when Carter Casey is hot, there isn't anyone better. The problem is that like, are we going to be able to keep him at that level for in the future? It's hard to say.
And like he's rattled right now. You can tell watching him, like he's not feeling confident. He's not feeling good. But like my kind of concern that goes a little deeper with him is that like the problem is very simple. His stance is horrible. But that's a pretty easy fix. The issue being that if he hasn't fixed this stance issue that he's had for the past 2 years, I've been watching him, there are other technical things that have to come along too. And how well can he bring along these more difficult parts of his game when, something that is seemingly pretty easy, hasn't moved along in the past 2 years. I think I should also mention this is a very strong goaltending class. I have 6 goalies within my top 3 rounds. I think other guys you could bring up are Dmitry Evchenko. I would love to talk about Proskurin. Like, there's a lot of goaltending talent here.
Agreed.
Can we lock in kind of projected upside for the ones we talked about, just so we have an idea where to slot him or when to call to you to have a judgment over when to slot them?
I'd like to say Borichev has the starting goaltender upside. I think the lack of like true dynamism will hold him back from being, potential elite level goaltender, but he's definitely, a very, very strong goaltender. I'd say Trejbal's probably about the same. I'd like to think maybe Trejbal has more upside from like an athletic standpoint, but a little less certainty, just given his rawness. Ainasto probably again starter, maybe tandem level upside, depending on how his development goes. And then Casey, I think, genuinely has that high end, potentially top 5 goalie in the league upside, maybe higher. But the floor is just it's not even the basement. It's like the floor might be just who he is right now, honestly.
So they're probably all second rounders on our board then. Except for Borichev, who might sneak in the first round with that description. And then we need to talk about Ryder Cali. Simo, do you want to talk a bit about him?
Yeah, of course. He was injured, so he missed a couple of weeks or months even. But yeah, I really like what I've seen since he returned. I haven't watched a ton of games, but it was really similar to what we've seen earlier in the season. So the physical details, just the constant engagement in the play, even flashes of playmaking ability. And we've talked about players with huge runway because of their birthday. Cali is also a very young player, early September birthday. So yeah, I'm very fan of him. He has the skating, the motor, the physical details. He's a dog on a bone. So yeah, very projectable player. I don't know what the upside is though, but I think we got an NHL player here in Ryder Cali.
Yeah,
I don't know, Lauren, if you had a chance to watch him since he returned from his injury.
Yeah,
did.
I've seen him twice. One was a really bad North Bay game, so um but he looked a lot better at the top prospects game. So like I don't have a problem with him being ranked here. I mean, I think based on what he showed in the first half before the injury, he could probably even rise a little bit higher, especially if he returns to that form in the second half. He just looked a little bit rusty in the game that I saw in league play right after the injury. So, uh, yeah, I think we have him in the right spot.
You like Rogoski more?
No, no, I think Kelly is better.
Mitch, what do you think of these
Yeah.
two?
I'm on Rogowski Island, so I think I like Kelly a lot. I like the pace that he plays at. I like the intensity. I think he's very similar to Shane Van Soggy from last year. I think odds are he's probably going to be more pigeonholed into a fourth line role. I think Rogowski probably is too, but with Rogowski, you have the greater certainty of him being a center, given that he's 6'7". The fact that he does have dynamic elements to his game, not that he'll translate them, but he does have some more advanced offensive thinking, just like Ryder Cali does. I think he just probably fits that role a little bit better in the NHL. And there are moments where Rogowski seems to have a little bit more, let's say, of the capacity to play higher up in the lineup, or like I think a team might believe in him a little bit more because of the flashes of skill, because of his reach and his handling ability in open ice. Whereas Callie is much more of a quick crossover, tight control of the puck, chip it in, try to beat the guy to the outside type player.
Wow, is he really 6'7"?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he grew to
yeah, he
six foot
grew.
seven.
Oh, I thought he was like 6'4", 6'5". Wow, he's
No,
moving really
No.
well for that
he was
size.
6'6" at the start of the year, and then he grew.
It keeps growing.
Yeah.
Okay. This changes things a bit because it's rare you see that quality of a skater at this size. So even if we have some hockey sense and playmaking dots, there's a lot more special there than even Cali, don't you think?
I mean, I definitely do.
I do now
I
too.
just
I
wish
didn't
I
think he was
saw
that size.
anything. I haven't seen him do anything. They come into town in a couple of weeks again, Oshawa, so I will see Rogowski again, provided he's not injured or suspended this time.
In terms of playmaking, there's a pretty big gap between them, I think. Cali has moments of more like advanced plays and manipulation and changing speeds of the rush, involving teammates. Rogoski is more of a streamlined player. So he has some rare flashes of this. We could really go in a bunch of way here, and we have to talk about Maddox Dagenet too, who is now a similar projection to these three, I think.
I
He
mean, I
was
think Dagenet is probably the better version of both of them, right? He's not the
Ah,
worker that Callie is, but he's more purely skilled. He's bigger. There's more physical runway there in terms of like adding some more mass. He's got a better shot.
more of a scoring game, I think. And I
Yeah.
think teams are going to look at him in more of a scoring role potentially, even if he's not scoring that much in a pretty weak team right now. The
yeah,
upside is enticing.
for
Still
sure.
second on the team.
Hattie, what do you
Yeah,
think of Dagenet?
I've come a long way on Deschnes. I think that's the best way to say it. I watched a recent game of his where he was dominant. I mean, the things he was doing in transition, like the manipulating defenders' feet, the ability to just kind of work off their heels and just make plays off the wall. Like it just you can really see the progression in his game since he actually started, I don't know, moving his feet and putting in the work. Um, I still have my reservations mainly because I don't know how long this is going to stick, but you definitely see, and I wrote about it, like you definitely see the progression in his motor and his effort level and his pace of play. Um, he's relying a lot on his tools advantages, like him being bigger and more skilled than his opposition is really kind of the main result of his production. And even with that, he's well under a point a game. So I don't know. I I'm okay with him in this range. That would be okay by me, especially with Mitch and David having strong opinions on him. I think we're working with this as our last player in the first round.
I'd put him at 31, actually. I agree with Mitch's argument. It's not only is a compromise between Cali and Rogoski, but there are more scoring upside here, I think, than both of
Yeah.
them.
He'll be developed as a scorer for sure. I agree with you.
Yeah. And then Cali, more of the groups in favor of this. I think it's Rogoski's spot after. Just a nice pairing between these three in terms of what they're going to be at the NHL level, similar profiles. And there's another two similar profiles after that, which is pretty weird to say because they have a big size difference. But Ryan Rubrick and GP Horbert, they're both scorers with some junior tendencies. What do we think of them? Who wants to compare them?
Hurlbert is like an extreme junior scorer, like you said. Like he understands how to break down WHL defenses pretty much every time he's on puck. All he does is, adjust his route inside, delay, and then he has the shooting or the playmaking to really trick up defenders. And he plays with some pretty high-end guys, and Lafreniere and Bam. So he's like he's complicated in a sense that the skill is really, really high end, but the way he goes about it just isn't in a projectable way. Like if he sees that there's a 50-50 battle down low, he's going to be streaking away, looking for that breakaway home run pass, and he's going to get it sometimes, and he's going to score on them. And that's how he's been pretty dominant. There's defensive engagement in his game, which gives you a little bit of hope. But I think he's a guy that'll have to fundamentally change the way that he operates as he goes to higher levels, which hurts his certainty quite a bit, and really chips into the upside that he has as a player. He doesn't really look super big on the ice either live, and he can become very, very disengaged if puck control is in the other team's hands for most of the night. So he's a complicated profile overall. And Rubrick, I think it's just like there's some hockey sense issues with him. A lot of outside play from what I've seen. He has the tools to be a top 6 player, but it's just about how he puts it together, which you don't really see a whole lot.
He's trending down, and usually that's a trend that's not going to correct itself very easily. When prospects tend to fall like this, it's almost a better bet to just continue to not push them down, but fewer recover, I feel, than go on to continue their fall. There's another debate here, though, with Herbert and Victor Plant. Mitch, what do you think of these two and how we should order them?
Yeah, I mean, with Plant, you definitely get more, traditional dynamic elements from an undersized player. He's much more get the puck, carry it with tons of speed. He's a great linear skater. Plus, we've seen the development of both of his brothers going from mechanically flawed skaters to becoming two very strong skaters, especially in terms of speed and output. I think Plant is probably more of the classic looking play driver. Hurlbert definitely cheats for a lot of the offense. He's looking for 2-on-1s, breakaways, taking advantage of breakdowns that he's not going to get at the same frequency at any other level. And on top of that, too, he's in a situation like Dan said, where the team kind of has him set up to be capitalizing on those things given his line mates. Plant is more of a longer term upside play. I think ultimately with Plant, there's probably just more runway. But again, the one hang up with Hurlbert, like we said last time, is that the flashes are there. He can play a deeper, lower game in the offensive zone. There are times where he can be more of a defensive piece, even a physical player. And then suddenly his game looks like a clear first round caliber prospect. So he continues to be the biggest conundrum of the draft overall. So I guess for me, it comes down to, do we want to try to crack the conundrum now, or would we just rather put that problem off until our April ranking?
I think we'll respect the scoring and the upside of Herbert for now, but Victor Plant is definitely someone on the rise. We can maybe hear our US scouts on him to end this conversation about the first round caliber prospects.
Yeah, Plant's a bunch of fun. I mean, the motor never dies with this player. You see a lot of Max Plant in his game as well, in terms of the player that Max Plant has become in college. I think that Victor is showing some more regular flashes of that style already in his draft year season than Max did, and the playmaking is. I mean, I guess toss up with Cullen for the best on the NTDP. Casey Muchin's taken a step back a bit in terms of playmaking generation and development over the course of the season. And I think both me and Whitaker see Victor Plant as a pretty clear like 30 to 45 or 30 to 40 guy. So early second round is very fitting. And yeah, I think I see a lot of what Mitch was saying too in terms of just the straight line speed, the dynamic handling, and just like creation off the rush. But yeah, I think that with Victor Plant you have like some middle six upside as well. And I think that this is a solid range for him. But Whitaker, do you have any other thoughts on where you'd put Victor Plant?
Yeah, I like Victor a lot. I mean, I think he's such a smart player. The motor is so high. It's hard to do the first round, just because he's so small. But the short game passing, the off puck intensity, the ability to use his body. I mean, his compete level, his motor is one of the best on the entire team, and one of the best playmakers on the team as well. I don't think I've really seen that many bad games from him just because his floor is so low, so high, sorry, to make plays and win pucks and contribute in that sense. So another guy that I thought had a good CHL USA prospects challenge. So yeah, I think this is a good range for him right around here.
Perfect, thank you. And hopefully he continues to grow a bit, Victor Plant. Horrible way to end the recording.
Our water hit.
My God.